Technology has never been more important to filmmakers than it is today. And tonight on The Buzz, we showcase exciting new trends that exploded at NAB, eGPUs, cloud-based animation, aerial cinematography, and ProRes RAW. We start with external GPUs. These are now supported in the latest High Sierra release of macOS. But what are they? Who are they for? And most importantly, do they work? Tonight, Larry O'Connor, the founder and CEO of OWC, helps us understand what's going on and how filmmakers can use it. Next, Rex Grignon is the CEO of the Nimble Collective. His team has created a cloud-based animation platform which is attempting to transform the creative process of creating an animated feature film. Tonight, Rex explains what they've created and how it works. Next, Brian Streem is the CEO of Aerobo Drone Services. Aerial shots can really enhance a scene, but drones are a lot harder to fly legally today than they were a year ago. Tonight, Brian describes how his team can help you create the perfect aerial for your next project. Next, the big news at NAB this year was Apple's new version of ProRes called ProRes RAW. The same day, Atomos announced 2 digital recorder updates that support this new format. Tonight, Jeromy Young, the co-founder and CEO of Atomos, joins us to explain this new codec and why it makes sense to use external recorders during production. All this plus James DeRuvo with our weekly doddleNEWS update. The Buzz starts now.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative.
One show serves a worldwide network of media professionals.
Current.
Uniting industry experts,
Production.
filmmakers,
Post-production.
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
Welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for the creative content industry covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Hi, my name is Larry Jordan. Tonight, we want to give you something to think about, so we have several different conversations that look at new technology or new trends introduced at NAB this year. One that I've written about recently involves external GPUs, or graphic processing units. This is new technology that Apple released a few weeks ago as part of High Sierra. As you'll learn in our first interview, this technology allows us to connect an external GPU to our computer that allows us to offload graphics processing in a way that's similar to how we connect external hard disks to increase their storage capacity. The challenge we face today is that, unlike external storage, not every app supports this new technology. Not yet, at least, nor, for that matter, is the technology as fully developed as the interfaces to storage. Larry O'Connor and his company are one of the first to release hardware that supports these new eGPUs, and I'm looking forward to chatting with him to learn more about this technology and how he expects it to evolve. Before we start, though, I want to invite you to subscribe to our free weekly show newsletter at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Every issue every week provides quick links to the different segments on the show, plus articles of interest to filmmakers. And best of all, it's free and comes out every Saturday morning. And now it's time for our doddleNEWS update with James DeRuvo. Hello, James.
Hello, Larry.
So what do we got that's top of the news this week?
Well, you know, while Facebook is grabbing headlines with Mark Zuckerberg testifying before Congress, behind the scenes, they're doing some really interesting things, including teaming up with Red to create a new virtual reality camera. It's based on a prototype virtual reality camera that they've been showing off at the annual F8 conference to developers for like the last 2 or 3 years. But the new version of it could be using multiple hydrogen 4-view sensors. That is the foundation of Red's new mobile phone with a holographic display. And it promises to provide not only 360-degree video and holographic imagery, but a spatial component maybe similar to the light field technology. We don't have a lot of details yet, but it looks very exciting. Facebook has been looking to brand virtual reality content creation, and this is going to provide a greater immersive component.
Well, this seems to be a very odd pairing. Facebook is social media appealing to the masses, while Red is a highly specialized camera appealing to professionals.
Well, that's true. But Facebook has always said that their goal has been to get their members into virtual reality when considering they bought Oculus for $4 billion. And from the looks of it, it's not enough just to create a 360-degree video space for their virtual reality members to play around in. It sounds like Facebook wants their users to live inside it by virtually moving within the space. And if this is true, they'll have to up the ante on the resolution of their Oculus headsets because, quite honestly, Larry, it's terrible.
All right, that's Red and Facebook. What else you got?
As you may have noticed, we talked about it briefly at the NAB Showbuzz at NAB. There were hardly any drones at NAB this year. In 2016, there were so many drones that NAB created a separate pavilion for them. And then 2 years later, in 2018, it seemed as if DJI was the last man standing. With the combination of restrictive state, federal, and local regulations, it's getting harder and harder to find an interesting place to fly drones. That could have had something to do with the fact that nobody's seeing drones anymore. And on top of that, Cine applications only account for about 7% of all drone use. So those are kind of the factors that may have contributed to there being fewer and fewer drone options showing themselves off in NAB this year.
Well, does that mean the drone market is dead?
Well, I don't think it's dead per se, but positive estimates indicated that drones would be a multi-billion-dollar industry. But most of those applications won't have an impact on the work that we do as filmmakers. Like I said, only 7% of the market is aerial cinematography.
Okay, that's the drone market. What's our third story?
Lexar lives. Lexar has been reborn and will restart the XQD memory card production line. Micron sold the brand to a Chinese manufacturer who had the goal to restart XQD production for both Nikon and Sony cameras. But delays happened in securing licensing agreements, plus they had to tool up for manufacturing since they could not bring any of Micron's factory tooling to the new facility. So they're expecting new cards won't be available on the market until at least summertime. Meanwhile, Lexar XQD supplies had been depleted at both B&H and Adorama, leaving Sony the only provider for the near future.
Well, this sounds like good news. Do you have any concerns about it?
Well, it's great news that Lexar is back and will providing a much-needed competitive presence again in the media card market. The concern I have, though, is growing pains. Since Micron only sold the brand name, the new owners have had to build factories from the ground up and secure their own licensing. So while it's great to see a familiar black and gold brand back on the market, it's not likely going to be that high-performance Lexar card we all know and love, at least at the very beginning.
Okay, so that's Lexar. What other stories are you following this week?
Well, other stories we've been following this week include new photos confirm DJI's next-generation Phantom drone will have interchangeable lenses. We've got a new series on importing your NLE timelines into DaVinci Resolve. And what would happen if a gimbal and a jib fell in love and had a baby?
And its name is?
Digiboom.
And for people that want more information on these and all the other stories you're following, where can they go on the web?
All these stories and more can be found at doddleNEWS.com.
And James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of DoddleNEWS and joins us every week. Thanks, James. Talk to you next Thursday.
See you next week.
Here's another website I want to introduce you to, doddleNEWS.com. DoddleNEWS gives you a portal into the broadcast, video, and film industries. It's a leading online resource presenting news, reviews, and products for the film and video industry. DoddleNEWS also offers a resource guide and crew management platform specifically designed for production. These digital call sheets, along with their app, directory, and premium listings, provide in-depth organizational tools for busy production professionals. doddleNEWS is a part of the Thalo Arts community, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with resources you need to succeed. Whether you want the latest industry news, need to network with other creative professionals, or require state-of-the-art online tools to manage your next project, there's only one place to go: doddleNEWS.com. Larry O'Connor is the founder and CEO of Otherworld Computing, which we all know as OWC. He founded it in 1988. OWC is both a reseller and developer, supporting all things Mac for more than 25 years. Hello, Larry. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Larry.
You know, one of the key things that I was hearing at NAB is this whole concept of what's called an eGPU. How would you define that?
It's pretty straight up. It's just simply a GPU that you can connect externally to your computer. So instead of depending upon your internal graphics chipset, or perhaps lack thereof, you can plug in an external GPU to take advantage of more GPU capability for faster graphics processing, whether it be games, VR, AR, scientific work. I mean, you name it. Anything that can benefit from a GPU, you can now connect externally to a system as opposed to being dependent just on what's built in.
Well, I was doing a check, and I was looking at Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and they weren't pushing the GPU at all. Who cares about this stuff?
It's going to be folks, that are doing more video editing, people who are mining on their Macs, although I don't think there's too much of that. And then you get into the AR and the VR space, where the GPU is being utilized, even some video playback with certain codecs. And that's where, again, the GPU is being utilized as opposed to the processor. Word and Excel, really don't care, but even just playing back, say some video, you get a great benefit from having a GPU. And that's actually, eGPU, and that's actually something else kind of note. It's not so much a big issue today with the 2016 and later machines, but certainly in the future when new codecs come out, those soldered-in, built-in GPUs don't necessarily have support for those codecs. You plug in an eGPU, and now you go back from taxing the processor to offload into a GPU that's designed for it.
Well, my understanding is that we have the operating system now formally supporting eGPUs. I mean, we've had hacks before that, but the key is that we now have direct operating system support. But don't we have to have changes to our software as well?
It depends upon the software and how they have their support implemented. A lot of software that, natively uses Apple's tools for OpenGL, Metal, and other, GPU-dependent, they call it subsystems routines, work pretty well right off the bat with 10.13.4. But absolutely, you look at some of the certainly reports with Adobe and such, there's a lot of opportunity for optimization and even changes to the software to fully utilize what's now available via those eGPU options.
Well, I was doing some homework prior to chatting with you. Apple Final Cut only supports eGPUs in a very limited way for the support of a VR headset and one other relatively small function. Premiere doesn't support it at all. DaVinci Resolve has very limited support. When should filmmakers start to pay attention to this technology as opposed to developers?
You really should take a look at your application, also what your system's built-in capability is. When you look at DaVinci Resolve, it really depends what you're doing, because in certain cases, people are reporting huge benefits, with our eGPU, connected up, as opposed to just a built-in video. The support may be limited, but where it is, certainly enabled, it's night and day in terms of what performance you can benefit.
Now, the actual hardware, the eGPU box, actually consists of a whole lot of different components, and you've got one which is called the Helios. What's in it?
Well, the Helios FX, has 550 watts a power supply. I mean, plenty of power for you to select the GPU that you'd like to put inside. effectively it gives you a bridge between any of the Apple recommended GPU cards and your Thunderbolt 3 Mac. It also works with a PC, but we're talking about Mac tonight, and Mac is certainly where you have the most, honestly, I believe, the most benefit.
Well, we've got, there's a couple things that are going on here. One, it has to have a power supply, Apple tells us, that has to be big enough to not only drive the graphics card, but it also has to be able to power the laptop, so the laptop gets powered from the eGPU. How do we know if
Correct.
the unit we've got, because there's, as far as I can tell, there are 3 or 4 companies that make eGPUs. How do we decide which one to get?
Well, I may be biased certainly towards our product, but you should. I would say choose a company that's certainly been in the Mac space, supports the Mac, and has a history of the right support in the community, so to speak. The other biggie would be Apple has specifically recommended a few cards, ours being say at the top of that list. And if it's Apple recommended, you certainly know that you can trust. It's certified, for the task, and it's got the right power to operate and power your system. There are PCIe chassis out there which potentially can support eGPUs, or say GPU cards in the boxes, but the products that are specifically certified to be sold as an eGPU solution, like the Helios FX, those are tested and fully enabled, and also have some optimizations that maximize their engagement for the use with an eGPU.
Larry,
GPU
hold it.
Cards are
Hop.
very high bandwidth.
Hold it. Take a breath. That was a brilliant answer to a really bad question. So let me try the question a different way. The Helios has 550 watts of power. Sonnet has got units that go from 350 to 650. Other units may only have 450 watts of power. What is the determination of how many watts of power we need? Why did you pick 550 and not 650? And how do we decide if we're getting a system which is underpowered for power?
Today, there's only one video card that our box can't power that's supported by Apple for eGPU use. So, quite frankly, today, until we bring out a 650, and I don't want to go into why we don't have a 650 right now, but nonetheless, you really just need to look at the GPU's requirements. And the good news is, like everything else over time, GPUs become more efficient. We get faster, we get better, we get more performance with less power. So, with the exception of one the highest end card, currently applicable for the solution, our box supports everything. If you do want that one card that our box doesn't have the power to officially support, the Sonnet would be the way to go.
How much power does a laptop draw? So if I know how much power the card takes, how much more do I need to allocate for the laptop?
Sure. The laptop can draw technically up to 85 watts at peak.
Okay, so whatever the card is plus 85 watts is what our minimum requirement is then. Do I have that right?
You have that right, and there's also a list of cards that Apple specifically supports, and they actually note which, what boxes they recommend them for. So you've got that guideline as well.
So now I'm going to take you way outside your comfort zone because you make really great hardware that supports the cards, but I was looking at Apple's list, and they list about 20 different graphics cards of a variety of different families. How do we make a decision on what card to get, or do we just spend the most money that our wallet affords?
It's going to go back, and this is a question about filmmakers earlier. It's really going to come down to what your application is really best able to utilize. Different cards have different strengths. There's certainly different levels of the same family of cards, and then you have different brand manufacturers, and you have cards with different feature sets even in between. So with given time, we'll get benchmarks up and we'll get other testing put out there, and that's really will come with better enablement and better engagement from the different software applications. But it really is going to come down to, typically, the more the GPU costs, the faster it is. But ultimately, it's like anything else. If you don't need it, there's no point in paying extra for a capability that's not going to benefit you. So it's really what the application can best utilize, and what your budget allows.
Without getting into specifics, next month we've got the WWDC conference from Apple, WWDC. What does Apple need to do in general to advance this technology, or are we just waiting for individual developers at this point?
I think it's a mix of both. I think we're continuing to see more engagement natively through the OS. Apple's certainly been putting the tools in place. And then it's in terms of the applications, it's ensuring that they can utilize more than one GPU. I mean, they default select in certain cases, what's built into the system, and making sure these applications become aware in the Mac platform that there are multiple GPUs available, and offload to different tasks to the multiple GPUs you've now got at your disposal. I think that's where we see some greater gains.
For people that want more information, where can they go on the web to learn about the Helios product?
They go to owcdigital.com.
That's all one word, owcdigital.com. Oh, Larry, one of the benefits of an eGPU is it allows us to extend our system beyond its initial capabilities. I'd like to invite you back next week to talk about ways that we can upgrade our systems with new hardware. Can you spare us the time?
I can, absolutely. For you, Larry, I'll find the time. We'll make it happen.
I look forward to it. Larry O'Connor is the founder and CEO of Otherworld Computing. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure, Larry. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Great show.
Rex Grignon is the co-founder and CEO of Nimble Collective. Prior to Nimble, Rex has animated some of the top films of all times, Toy Story, Shrek, and Madagascar. As CEO of Nimble Collective, Rex and his team are transforming animation production by taking it into the cloud. Hello, Rex. Welcome.
Good morning, Larry. Nice to be here.
Before we start to talk about your company and all the cool stuff you're doing, what first got you interested in animation?
Well, it's probably a pretty common story. Bugs Bunny, really, at the root of it all. I blame Bugs. Saturday morning cartoons.
Well, now let's shift forward a few years. You've animated more than one feature film yourself. Why did you start the Nimble Collective?
Nimble really was born out of education. I was teaching animation at the university level, and I saw that a lot of the programs that I was working in spent a lot of time figuring out technology and not as much time teaching the craft and artistry of animation. And so I sort of put that together and said, wow, these art schools are spending a lot of time building technology. They should really be teaching artists how to be better animators and actors. So that was when I partnered up with Scott LaFleur, my original partner in Nimble. And we realized that it was possible to stream an application from the cloud. And that was the first step where we said, wow, if we can build a pipeline once in the cloud, then any school in the world could use that and really focus on teaching, storytelling and animation and not worry about building technology. So that was the genesis of it. Once we had done that, it grew into something much bigger than that.
Which gets me exactly to my next point. Now that we understand why you started the company, how would you describe Nimble Collective today?
Nimble Collective is a cloud-based animation pipeline. So it means that we've really focused on how artists work together. The cloud has sort of enabled us to allow people to collaborate very seamlessly without building all this complex technology for making creative projects. So you basically access Nimble through a browser, and we included in the workflow are people's favorite creative tools. So we don't make tools like Photoshop or Houdini or Toon Boom, Harmony. These are all tools that artists love to use, and we bring them together so artists can use them within the workflow that we provide.
If you're using traditional artistic tools, why do they need you?
The real huge value of Nimble is that we allow people to work together. Animation tends to be a team sport, if you will, where artists with different skills have to come together. It's not usually just one person. So we want to make it very easy for people with different skill sets who use different tools to come together and make a project, even a small independent project or a short commercial or a feature film. The problems at the core are the same kind of problems. How do artists connect with very little friction? So we want an artist to spend more time being creative and less time dealing around with technologies.
But let me play devil's advocate for a moment. We've all seen the behind-the-scenes videos where the artists are staring at a storyboard and hashing out an idea and trying to figure out the next story point. And There's value in these group meetings where everybody is in the same room trying to solve the same problem. If we're on the web, we don't have that same connectivity.
The web does not mean you're not in the same room. There's no requirement that you're not in the same building or the same room. I agree with you. I think that in-person connectivity is very important. And in fact, I would advocate anybody working with a distributed team, at the very least, gets that team together for some FaceTime. And so everybody, could sort of see that everyone else is a real person. So I agree with you wholly. What we provide is the ability to expand your team. Let's say you needed to add a bunch of artists in short notice. That's something that's very possible. And now with our partnership with Zerply, that becomes very easy. So this is one end of the scale, if you will. So the new thing that we're providing is for studios to have the option of having some of their artists work from home. This is great for artists. These artists have had to move their families around the world to chase work, and studios have to move artists to them. So we're not really dictating how the platform is used. We're really affording these opportunities for studios and artists alike to use it in the best way for their lives.
How does the Nimble platform work? In other words, what do I need to do to sign up and join and participate?
As a studio, you'd talk with our folks, and we'd get you set up. Essentially, you access once we get you an account, you access Nimble through a browser. You'd log into a front page, and everything would be handled there. Your whole production, your dashboard of projects that you're entitled to work on. And then you basically, double click in and the application opens right in the browser. You don't need to install anything on your computer. The other big value here is that at a big studio, they would have to put a very expensive graphics workstation on the desk of every artist. With Nimble, that goes away. You need very little computing power on the artist's desktop. So you could run an animation studio essentially on something like a Chromebook, where you can't even download software onto the laptop. So it really changes the infrastructure costs if you choose to take advantage of that.
At one of the universities where I teach, we worked with virtualized Photoshop, where we were dialing into a virtual server and found the latency and the delay so excessive that our students couldn't use it. How are you getting around that problem?
Well, I agree with that. I'm an artist first and a CEO second. So we started Nimble, with our core philosophy being this experience has to be fantastic. So we've developed our own technology and partnered to make sure that the latency is not an issue. This week, we were just demonstrating Nimble with a 4 millisecond latency, which is very, 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 very low latency. So you're getting hundreds of frames per second redraw, meaning, just very, very fluid interaction with the applications. And we have little or no compression on the image, so you get a very, very crisp image. You can read all the little text on the menu. So it's a very, very high fidelity. We say it's like local, so it's like running on your local machine. And it's got, even in the 3 years since we started the company, it's got fantastically better than when we started. So companies like Nimble are bringing awareness to this, the importance of this technology. So we're finding a lot of support from big partners. We were just at NAB with Microsoft demonstrating the Nimble Collective platform in their booth and got a ton of just fantastic reception there.
From an artist point of view, what does an artist pay to become a part of the platform?
At the moment, we're focusing on studio pricing, so it's a seat license, essentially. These are negotiated contracts with the studios that we're working with. And as we expand around the globe with our partners, the reach for talent expands, and that's where our partnership with Zerply becomes very important, where you can come to Nimble, have all your workflow, have all the technology sorted, and in the same stop, find your team and engage them and pay them and everything. So it becomes a very, very high value, one-stop shop if you're creating animation. The artist community has been somewhat nomadic in this industry, and we're giving them an opportunity to connect with studios potentially around the world without moving their family every time they get a new job. So this has been welcomed with big, wide open arms in the artistic community. So we love that.
For people who want more information, where can they go on the web?
Please just come to www.nimblecollective.com.
That's all one word, Nimble, Nimble, Collective, Collectiv, nimblecollective.com. And Rex Grignon is the co-founder and CEO of the Nimble Collective. And Rex, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to chat, Larry. Talk to you soon.
Brian Streem is the founder and CEO of Aerobo, a drone services company that specializes in high-end cinematography for film and commercial projects. He founded Aerobo in 2015, which has since grown to be the industry leader in aerial cinematography. Hello, Brian. Welcome.
Hey, Larry. How you doing? Thank you for having me on.
Oh, always a pleasure. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Before we talk about before we talk about the company, what first attracted you to drones and aerial cinematography?
The first thing that attracted me to drone was actually not the drone at all. Since I was a child, I've always been fascinated with camera movement in movies. Whenever you watch kind of like a Goodfellas type of shot or just like a very long, contiguous sort of a shot, it's always just fascinating. It's like the perfect intersection of art and technology. And, when you watch a good movie and you see something that, dazzles you, you go, how did they do that? So it wasn't the drone that did it for me. It was really kind of the movement of cameras and the ability to kind of get photography that you couldn't achieve otherwise.
Well, one can move a camera without using a drone. Why did you decide to start Aerobo?
You could move a camera with other means, but it just it was photography that you couldn't capture from any other perspective. This kind of 10 to 75 foot away from you perspective above the ground that I just thought was a unique angle that we hadn't really seen in filmmaking before. Why I started, I kind of got into it early. I started to get into drones in 2013. I noticed that it was a simple idea. It was just kind of the realization that, I bet people in the film industry would want to use this. And I bet you I could, rent out some equipment and some people. And I'm sure I could kind of sell this as a product. I knew the market. I came from a film background and I produced movies and I went to film school. So I saw an opportunity and I took it.
So how would you describe what the company does now?
Sure. So right now we have a small but very talented network of drone operators based in several locations across the country. Our main bases of operation are in New York and Los Angeles, and we do essentially they're trained and certified by us. We have the drone equipment, and essentially customers hire us for a day at a time, sometimes multiple days, to execute their creative vision. Well, and we've done projects anywhere from Steven Spielberg movies to we did Fast and the Furious 8. We just did True Detective, and we did House of Cards recently. So we're working quite a bit right now.
You talk about having a network of drone operators. What makes a good drone operator?
Well, it's really a twofold or a threefold thing. So first, you need the drone pilot, who needs to be very talented. A lot of times the customers want, especially for an aesthetic shot, they want something that is visually daring, so faster, closer. So the pilot needs to be very good. He or she needs to kind of have his or her nerves about themselves and be able to kind of compose themselves. They are sometimes flying drones carrying $150,000 of camera equipment. And then there's a camera operator as well, and he or she needs to have an aesthetic eye. And it's not just them separately. They kind of both need to share, communicate almost telepathically, but not quite, to kind of sense like each other's movements on what's going to make ultimately a beautiful image. I often say customers don't pay us for drone service. They really pay us for pretty pictures.
Do you have a preference for drones or cameras in the work that you do? Yeah,
I mean, I a lot of people can't tell. There's obviously DJI makes a lot of drones, and we do film with those, and they make a really good product. And we shoot a lot of projects on like a $15,000 to $20,000 DJI drone, like an Inspire 2, fully kitted out. But for me, nothing looks really as good as like a big drone flying an Alexa Mini or a red camera with master primes or a really nice set of glass.
Anything that's got master primes is going to look good. I don't care where you put the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
If I was a new client, what questions would you ask me to determine how to get the shots that I want for my project?
Sure. Sometimes customers, clients, sometimes they come prepared with like a 3D rendering of what they want to do, like a pre-visualization. That's at the end of the day, that's like super helpful for us. They should come kind of with their own vision of what they're looking for, and sometimes people come, with a very clear idea. Sometimes they look to our kind of aerial cinematographers for assistance. But what we're going to ask is we're going to know, what are you looking to do? What kind of equipment are you looking to use? What kind of cameras, lenses? Where are you looking to do it? Sometimes we might go on a location scout. So sometimes we're pretty involved in the production. And what's their budget? And of course, when are they looking to do it is pretty important as well.
How do you price your services?
It goes from anywhere from $2,000 up until $10,000 a day.
And
that's all depending on what kind of equipment.
A 2 or 3 man crew?
It's anywhere from a 2 to 3 man. Typically on the larger jobs, there is a third kind of technician, somebody who's charging batteries and supplying the operators with assistance.
What have you got planned for the future that filmmakers need to pay attention to?
We are a few months away from launching a really, really cool software product that is kind of essentially focused on this idea that the drone shouldn't fly the camera, but the camera should fly the drone. Because users don't care about what the drone is doing. They really only care about what the camera is looking at. So that's coming out in the next couple of months.
I want to hear more when you're able to talk about it. That sounds very cool.
Sure, I'd love to come back.
That's just have to invite you back for a second day. For people that want more information, where can they go on the web?
Yeah, you can check us out on our website at aerobo.com, AEROBO.com.
And do you have any sample footage there that people can take a look at?
Sure. When you go right to the website, our reel plays on the splash page.
Oh, that sounds very cool. And which films have you worked on? You told me you worked with Steven Spielberg. What are some of the others?
We did The Post. Most recently we did True Detective, and we did... So the upcoming season of True Detective and the upcoming season of House of Cards.
Some very, very cool, very high-profile projects. Brian, it sounds like you have managed to find yourself a successful corner to be in, and I wish you great success.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Larry. Appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon. You take care.
Bye-bye.
The website is AEROBO, Aerobo.com. Brian Streem is the founder and CEO of Aerobo, providing drone services all across the U.S., based in New York and L.A. Back in just a minute. I want to introduce you to a new website, Thalo.com. Thalo is an artist community and networking site for creative people to connect, be inspired, and showcase their creativity. Thalo.com features content from around the world with a global perspective on all things creative. Thalo is the place for creative folks to learn, collaborate, market, and sell their works. Thalo is a part of Thalo Arts, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with the resources you need to succeed. Visit Thalo.com and discover how their community can help you connect, learn, and succeed. That's Thalo.com. Jeromy Young is the co-founder and CEO of Atomos. Based in Melbourne, Australia, Atomos develops cutting-edge products, including 4K and HD monitor recorders, signal converters, and power management solutions, all focused on video professionals. Founded in 2011, the company now has offices and distribution around the world. Hello, Jeromy. Welcome back.
Hey, Larry. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to our conversation. Why did you decide to start Atomos?
I worked in Japan for 7 years inside a DV editing board company, now known as Edius. And then I went out and sold the equipment to the professionals in the world, and it was a very interesting experience to see the problems that they had. And the problem was that the camera manufacturers were not thinking about what happened after the camera. So the reason we started Atomos was to connect the imaging camera world to the post-production computer world. And we saw a big opportunity to bridge those two worlds together. And that's what Atomos really started as, putting the capture card at the camera, adding some monitoring features, and trying to connect those two together to make life easier for the professional.
Before we get into your announcements at NAB, I want to talk more about this bit of using a digital recorder, because most cameras include a built-in recording system. I take the little card out or whatever. Mm-hmm. Why do we need to use gear from Atomos?
It goes back to the pioneers of digital video on a computer were Avid, and they pioneered what has been, I guess, coined as an editing codec or an editing video format called DNX. And Avid DNX was the pioneer of a single editing format. And the reason this is important to your question, why do you need a recorder? As Apple came into the market with Final Cut, added the intermediate editing codec for the Mac called ProRes, which was very similar to DNX. And they were built for high bit depth color processing. They were built for easy packing and unpacking in CPU and GPUs, and easy to process while maintaining quality. And the camera, on the other hand, has a different goal. The camera is receiving massive amounts of data from the sensor, and in a small period of time, a real-time scenario, is recording those images and needs to make some decisions. In order to record big data, you need big hard disks and big flash memory, especially in the digital world, which means the camera gets bigger. So what the camera makers have necessarily done is cut data down and reduce the quality, essentially recording distribution formats. And I always give the analogy as to why do you need a recorder on top of your camera? Well, the internal recording is akin to recording MP3s in many ways, and I'll get a little bit more technical about that in a second. But basically, it's recording a distribution format, which is great for moving video around. It's great for moving images to and from places. But if you want to do anything to the footage, or in the case of audio, MP3, for example, if you recorded MP3, you wouldn't master that. You wouldn't produce a record from it. Everyone knows that you need to keep quality very high at the beginning of the process. In video and cinema, Hollywood do that very well. And what these intermediate codecs inside the computer, what the opportunity we saw was to put the recording of those on top of the camera. And people ask, so how did you achieve that? Well, there's this wonderful phenomenon which all the camera makers have done for a long time, and they have outputted the direct sensor image that's had a few things done to it, a few things cleaned up from the sensor, like defect pixels removed and black level corrections done, and to make it look nice as an image. And that is the step before they compress it onto the small memory card internally, when they kind of throw away some of the data and really go to that H.264 or MPEG distribution format that they put on the card internally on the camera. And what we did was see the opportunity to take their non-compressed, uncompressed video output from either an SDI output or an HDMI output directly from the sensor. It hasn't been touched by their final compression that gets it onto the card internally. And we thought, you know what, they're all taking this compressed stuff off the card and putting it into this intermediate formats, Avid or ProRes, into the computer, which makes it play nicely in the computer. But you've already lost some data in going to these internal card formats that the camera was recording to. So why don't we up the level a bit inside? And that level is significantly increased. So the reason you need a recorder sitting on top of your camera, the first instance, is to record higher quality from a camera that isn't capable of doing that internally. So we are increasing the bit rate, we are compressing less, we are capturing more of the quality of that sensor that is coming out of the output of the camera.
So that brings us up to date with why, but now we get to talk about what. What did you announce at NAB this year?
So a couple of things. I think the first one is the progression of our Ninja series, which a lot of people have known Atomos for. At NAB, we announced the Ninja 5, marked by a V, as in a Roman numeral. The Ninja 5 is a 5-inch screen. It does 4K 60. It does HDR, 10.5 stops, which is around 95% of what the camera's able to deliver. So you can really set up your shots properly. It's a very small package. It records to what we call an SSD mini, which we've worked with the SSD manufacturers to keep the price low on a standardized format. This is the first time that someone's releasing this type of SSD, but really it's the internals of a standard 2.5-inch SSD. It's about the size of an iPhone 8 in screen size, and it's about 3 of those probably put together in thickness, and the media sits inside that. That's the first thing we announced with the Ninja 5, so watch out for that. We'll be shipping that in the next month and a half. We're about 6 weeks away from shipping that. The second thing that we announced, which was the advent of being able to use the Prores Compression algorithm, or all the performance that gives you inside the computer in this kind of intermediate codec, which we brought with the normal ProRes, which video ProRes. We're now applying that to RAW, so it's ProRes RAW. And that was a long development effort with Apple and with the camera makers, because we have to support each sensor output, and we have to pack up the sensor values from the raw values of the cameras in a very specific way in order to standardize it through ProRes RAW. So that was a huge announcement and a big endeavor by our little company to work with the biggest company in the world in technology especially, and one of the most successful ever. And I can tell you that they are a dream to work with on one level. They push you very hard on another level. But what it breeds is an end-to-end solution that enables cameras to record much better quality than they could before. So we're upping that original reason. And it's giving you the flexibility of those raw images, and then the performance of what we're used to with a ProRes workflow inside Mac computers.
When should we record RAW, and when should we not record RAW? What's the deciding factor?
So that's the first thing. Your camera has to be able to do it. And we support 9 different cameras from Sony, Panasonic, and Canon. And they're all larger format sensors, but they're an affordable camera. So they're around the $5,000 mark, up to around $15,000. The second thing is you need to be actually wanting to be creative with your images and your storytelling.
Wait. Take a breath. I don't think you mean what you're saying, and I want to just push back at you. Are you saying that the only way we can be creative is to shoot RAW?
No, I definitely am not saying that. However, the ability to be creative is extended. Your range that you can push your images and be unique in your creativity is increased if you record RAW. What this is when you add the RAW element into it, you're now opening up a whole nother magnitude of the ability to move the images around. Now, a lot of people in their work don't need to do that, or the intermediate codec, ProRes or DNX was enough, or even sometimes H.264 is enough. I have a lot of customers that come to me and say, I don't really think I need ProRes, and I ask them what they're doing. And there's a good percentage of them, let's say 30, 40% of them, that there is no reason for them to go to an intermediate codec. So being honest with the customer is it really does depend how much you think you're going to want to move things around for the job. And it depends on the job, Larry. If you're doing a wedding and you're cookie cuttering it because you've got 20 to do in that month, then you're probably not being as creative as if you're doing a commercial for Audi and they are asking you on a budget to push things further. So I think it definitely depends on the job. It depends on the type of delivery, the type of product you need to deliver to the customer. But what I am saying is that RAW gives you the most flexibility, the most creative license. Next is intermediate codecs, and last is the internal recording on the camera.
And that gets me to ask the question, how do we determine which Atomos recorder to use for our project?
Good question. So if you have an HDMI-only camera, then you're looking at our Ninja series. The Ninja series is only HDMI. It does not have SDI connections on it. It does everything that the SDI-capable products do, but is built at a more affordable price in order to meet the needs of DSLR users, cameras that are HDMI only. And if you then go to anything above that, which is SDI, quad-link, 12G SDI, 4K P60, HD 240, you go faster frame rates, you go more connections, or more, I would say, for want of better words, more professional connections, because they just do extend into higher end workflows, then you would step into a Shogun. So Ninjas and Shoguns are our 5 and 7 inch models. Ninjas are all HDMI, Shoguns are all SDI and HDMI, so they have both on them. So that really, the connection will depend what you step into. The operating systems are all the same across them. Some of the features vary slightly because of those different connections and the support for things like, for example, RAW is only supported over SDI at the moment, but we are in talks with a lot of people trying to do it over HDMI or some other way that's more affordable. So that you can watch this space for that type of development. There's only 3 models. There's the Ninjas, there's Shoguns, and then there's the Sumo. And the Sumo is a big version of the Shogun. So it's a 19-inch version. It takes you up to, we saw a big need for on-set and around customer review. A 7-inch is nice on camera, but when you're trying to show your clients or have a creative kind of session with your team, it's tough to huddle around a 7-inch. So we packaged up the Shogun into a 19-inch, put longer battery times on it. There's a lot of accessories around it, like C-stand mounts and things that you can put at weddings and in auditoriums, so that people can actually see the video from a distance on what isn't too big and reasonably portable at 19 inches. It's quite light and easy to mount, but it gives you all the controls, playback, recording that a Shogun does. So the answer is really small, go a Ninja. Medium cameras with SDI, you want a Shogun, or if you want the flexibility of running HDMI to SDI, it's all built-in conversion and things. We've done all that for you. And then if you want to review, or you want a bigger monitor on set because you've got a few people watching it, then we recommend stepping into a Sumo.
And for people that need more information about any of these products, where can they go on the web?
You can go to atomos.com.
That's all one word, ATOMOS, atomos.com. And Jeromy Young is the co-founder and CEO of Atomos. Jeromy, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Larry.
You know, I've been thinking. As I listened to our guests this evening, I realized that each of the subjects they were talking about represented 3 bigger trends that are causing both opportunity and stress for each of us. The first is extending and upgrading our systems to do more. Second is using the cloud to manage collaboration and workflow. And third is improving our ability to store and manage our media. When it comes to extending our systems, one of the big questions that confronts Apple as they design the upcoming Mac Pro is how do they allow us to extend and configure the hardware to do what we need for our specific tasks. Additionally, even iMac and laptop owners want the ability to expand their hardware outside the confines of the original box. External GPUs are an intriguing, if not yet fully developed, way to improve the performance of one of the big bottlenecks in filmmaking, effects rendering. I expect to learn more about Apple's medium-term plans at next month's WWDC conference. Another trend is balancing the obvious collaboration that the cloud makes possible with the equally obvious limitations of security, limited bandwidth, and excessive latency. The cloud reminds me of the original days of computing, where we had a single large mainframe computer with terminals attached to it. This is essentially the model of the cloud: vast computer resources stored out there while we work with simpler devices connected locally. This also means that we're moving from owning software to renting it, which has significant benefits for developers but raises significant questions about who controls access to our data and applications after the production phase is over, or team members retire, or assets need to be archived for the long term. And the third trend is that everything we do as filmmakers today creates more and more files requiring more and more storage. Even small projects are creating so many clips that it's impossible for any of us to keep them all in mind during an edit. And shooting 4K, 6K, even 8K images doubles again the amount of storage capacity that we need, to say nothing of HDR, which doubles storage requirements again. The Buzz will be covering all these issues in future weeks. They are at the technological heart of filmmaking today. And the answers are complex, especially when you consider that most filmmakers think long-term about creating and preserving their assets, while most developers are focused short-term on creating the next update. This conflict between the results of short and long-term thinking will only get worse until all of us can find a common ground of shared goals that benefits everyone. Just something I'm thinking about. I want to thank this week's guests, Larry O'Connor with OWC, Rex Grignon with the Nimble Collective, Brian Streem with Aerobo Drone Services, Jeromy Young with Atomos, and James DeRuvo with doddleNEWS. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all online and all available to you today. And remember to sign up for our free weekly show newsletter that comes out every Saturday. Talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner, with additional music provided by smartsound.com. Our producer is Debbie Price. My name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for listening to the Digital Production Buzz. The Digital Production Buzz is copyright 2018 by Thalo LLC.